Okay, well, good morning. So thank you for making the time, everybody, for this second round of the subgroup conversations to review the recommendations of the ASDSO report and potentially new recommendations that task force members might be bringing up today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just for us to review our agenda for today. And hopefully that is visible for folks. Okay, great. I see some head nods. We have scheduled an hour and a half today for us to review recommendations related to outreach and awareness, safety and security at dams, a continuation of the previous meetings conversation, and very happy to have the staff from Dam Safety Program also on the call. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit, the full task force is meeting again on Monday, November 30th. And we have, as you know, had 12 additional meetings of these 6 subgroups to really work through the recommendations and have more time for you all to think about them, to ask questions, and to more fully vet those and identify some gaps in the recommendations. So for today, most of our time, I guess as much as we need, we will have for a work session for conversation. And then if there are additional recommendations from any of you for these categories, we will just discuss those. And then just a little bit of reviewing of action items and next steps, especially as it pertains to our meeting at the next week, the end of the month. Are there any questions or concerns about the agenda? And if you do, please just unmute yourself since I don't see all of you right now. Okay, all right, I'm just going to stop sharing the screen. Great. So just to do a quick recap of where we left off, this group had reviewed all but, well, last time you had reviewed all of the recommendations in the recommendations with resources spreadsheet. And we had, I'll share that screen now too. Hopefully you also had a chance to look at that before today's meeting. Is that showing up, the Excel spreadsheet? No. Okay. Let me try that again. How about now? Yes.
Yeah, this is Brett, and I may have discovered perhaps what Marty was talking about. I tried to save this file into my folders or into my files, and it's telling me the titles or the name is too long, so I just trimmed it down and then it saved. So I don't know if that's a software thing or what. Only,
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brett.
Yep.
So is the Excel spreadsheet visible to you? Great. So at the basically the outreach and awareness recommendations you have reviewed and adopted or adopted with revisions. And I'll scroll down to the 2 primary safety and security at dams recommendations. So the first one you chose to adopt with a few revisions. And then where we ended up was on 220-19-A. Sorry. Trying to, okay, I hope I'm not making anybody dizzy. Look away just a moment. Oh, there, no, golly. All right, I'm just gonna leave it there. So there was discussion last time regarding safety, dam safety and dam security. wanted to check in with Abby and Luke. I don't know that Peter's joining us today. Did not see him on the call. So I wanted to check back with the two of you. You had offered to propose some revised language on this. Just wanted to check on status of that.
Sure, so we had some email back and forth, and there was some draft language. Abby, did you make any changes, or do you want me just to pull that up and share it with the group?
Go right ahead and pull it up and share it with the group.
All right, give me 3 seconds while I find that. I got.
While Luke's doing that, so Brett and Marty, the problem that you're experiencing, is it with primarily this Excel file? So if I save it with a shorter name?
That's what I did. Yeah, it was just that Excel file.
Mine was the Word doc to Elizabeth, but I actually dragged it onto my desktop, so I shortened the characters in the path, so I was able to open it up.
Okay.
Are you guys able to see my email window here?
Yes.
Yes.
So I can just read it. It says, development and implement programs related to security, public safety, and public awareness of dams in accordance with industry standard and available resources. These efforts should be implemented in collaboration with local, state, and federal agencies and national organizations. Programs should include provisions for evaluation, identification, prioritization, and exercising of plans and any necessary corrective actions. Requirements, it just says it would probably require legislative and rule changes since there are currently no provisions in 315 or the rules to require that from dam owners. So it kind of was an adaptation of the ASDSO recommendation, but including, the kind of wrapping the three together, the security, the public safety, and the public awareness into, separate programs.
Thanks, Luke. Abby, is there anything that you wanted to add about this?
No, I don't think so. There's quite a bit of overlap when it comes to the security measures and the emergency operations plan for the dam itself. And so there's been kind of quite a bit of conversation back and forth between Luke and myself. And I think some of the recommendations from the other task group kind of commingle with this one as well.
Abby, are you referring to the legislation and authority subgroup or a different one?
No, I'm sorry. I'm referring to the, it's the compliance enforcement and emergency operations planning.
Okay.
And Abby can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the intent here was to kind of have the task force look at adding to or modifying the language in the statute or the rules to just give the authority to require this stuff, and then we would develop the plan kind of later because we have to do a lot of research on what resources exist, if there's templates and things like that, or we have to develop those templates. So but that's probably not something that we need a lot of legislative input into once we have the authority to require that of dam owners, was kind of the thought. Elizabeth, do you want me to forward this language to you in an email and then you can copy and paste it?
That would be great. I was just thinking through the technical hoops for that. And so if I'm understanding correctly where we left off, the proposed language would be to replace 2019A. Is that correct? Okay.
All right, that should be heading your way, so I'm going to stop screen sharing.
Okay. Yes, I see it. Okay, I will copy this and paste it, and then I can share my screen again. I don't know, maybe we should have Amy unmute herself so that we can have while you wait music playing. Okay, I will share this again.
Dan said that he would volunteer to sing when you guys get the band together. So we'll let you decide if it's Dan Scripps or Dan Devon. They can rock the scissor for it.
I think
Well,
you're all
we could
gonna
do auditions
wildly prefer
today.
Dan Devon.
I think that's a lose-lose proposition.
All right, so I am hoping that you're seeing that spreadsheet again on the screen. Okay, and I just put in red then. So this would be strike through. And so in this case, if this is something that the group wants to do, this would be then, I guess, a reject the 2020-19-A recommendation from ASDSO, and then we can make a note that it would be replaced with this proposed language. Do folks want just like a few minutes to think, to read it through or ask questions or?
Elizabeth, I have a general thought, and I think we might have an omission for both 2020-19 A and for 18A. After reading through that, I noticed that tribal governments, and I'll defer to Brett on this, were not listed in there, and as sovereign government should be included in both those. So if we could, I would suggest that we add tribal governments to both 18A and 19A.
I would concur. Thank you, Marty. And that was, yeah, you beat me to the punch. That's fine.
Okay. Usually it used to beat me, so.
And it's good to know that there's, you know, a couple folks looking out. So thank you.
Would that be in this area here? And Marty, was that an omission from ASDSO's recommendations? Is
Yes.
trust? Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, good catch. How does that look?
Looks good, thank you. I wonder if we could consider it in 17C as well. I'll defer to Luke on that because it seems like, is that more for internal training, Luke, the 2020 17C?
Yeah, you know, I think when I read this, I just kind of interpreted stakeholders as all interested groups, you know, that have a part in dam safety and would benefit from this type of training. But, you know, I absolutely have no objection to listing tribes, you know, as one of those separately as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, so absolutely fine to add it.
Okay.
Okay. Formatting fun. Clean this up later.
Yeah, Shift Enter does not work in Excel. I found that out too. You got to put a whole bunch of spaces in.
Yes.
Did the same thing this morning, Luke.
I think it's Alt Enter, isn't it?
Say it again?
Try Alt Enter. See if that gives you an extra line. Look at that, Dan. The
We're
guru.
totally-
We learned something.
Dan, what was that?
Alt, enter.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That would have saved me a lot of time the other day. Thanks, Dan.
Now you don't have to sing.
Perfect.
Man.
Yeah, that very good additions. Okay. Okay, going back to this last one here. How are the task force members feeling about this wording? And you ready to, is there more discussion to have, or are you comfortable with this to replace 2020-19A?
It looks fine to me. I guess, and maybe I missed it already, about just what was the important thing that the group was trying to address. I think I missed the last call, so I probably missed part of that discussion.
I think from our perspective is that we don't have the authority to require the dam owners to participate in development of a security, public safety, or public awareness plans, because dam safety doesn't stop with just the physical structure and its likelihood of failure. It has, drownings and recreation. You have security, for people that are trying to do bad things, and just public awareness. People who live in and around dams are subject to risk just from having that dam be there, creating a hazard, or if it fails. So I think this was to give us the regulatory teeth to require owners to kind of think this way and prepare these type of plans, but also to set up the framework of how those plans should be developed with what type of stakeholder input, because it's not something that we could do on our own. We need input from all those folks that are listed out there.
That makes sense. Thanks.
You know what, I'm open to suggestions. I'm trying to remember what we did in another group recently where we've rejected. So I was going to make the language consistent.
We can't, I mean, since it's the same subject matter, can't we just do an adopt as revised?
Sure.
Yeah, I think there'll be opportunity to scrub these later and kind of make the language match, once it goes to the final recommendations to the task force.
Yeah. Marty, did you have something? I was just
going to mention I'm comfortable with it too. Tanya had kind of put it out there, and I was agreeing that I'm fine with the language as is.
So now that you've gone through all of these, in the email that was sent out, there was also mention, and on our agenda, opportunity to identify gaps related to outreach and awareness and safety and security at dams. And I want to ask if there are new recommendations that you wanted to introduce at this time.
Hey, Elizabeth, before we get into new recommendations, I just wanted to expand on that last one. Is the recommendation is to develop language, or the recommendation recognizes that statutory changes would be necessary. So I guess, for these ones that aren't like developing, it's not going to be the licensing structure language we've seen in some of the other groups, but I wonder if it makes sense for somebody or a group of people on this group to propose changes to existing statute and rules or addition to, because I think we have the framework kind of set up, and just like, where we're requiring emergency action plans, we can also require security, and public safety plans or something like that. But we would it be the desire of the task force to prepare that language, or leave it to Eagle to take that recommendation to prepare the language, and when we engage the legislature to do that? So I think this is a lot less complex than some of the other ones where we're proposing framework, but still maybe it would be good to have some language. So I'm just open to suggestions on that one.
Yeah, Lou, thanks for raising that. As some of you may have discussed in some of your other subgroups, this would be a good opportunity for the task force to develop some sample language that could be included in recommendations to the legislature, rather than leaving it wide open and having them take a crack at it.
And maybe we don't have to answer it today, but I think, if the task force wants to go in that direction, we can probably provide, citations of the law where we think, it could be adapted, or added to, like the EAP sections or something like that would make sense here, because it's submittal of a plan, and then you just add a subset of what each individual plan must require or contain, similar to the language for EAPs, the emergency action plan. So that would be my thought. But so I guess if that's the desire of the task force, we can probably provide those citations and give some thoughts on, how to achieve that.
Thanks, Lou. I know nobody wants to volunteer right before a big holiday. I'll just ask the question again, is that something that any of the task force members on the call are interested in working on? Okay. Well, for now, we'll make the asterisk and keep it in the conversation. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen. Okay, well done. Thank you, everybody, for going through those. So, yes, we'll talk about new recommendations, but I also just want to mention that in preparation for the next full task force meeting, we are working to, as best as we can, turn around all of this subgroup work into some digestible spreadsheets, so that when we are reporting out at the meeting on Monday, we can do a high-level treatment of everything that's been discussed, because, of course, time is limited, and so you have been able to participate in only a couple of the 6 subgroups. So this would be a chance to hear what's been happening with the other groups, and to take a look at the recommendations and what condition they're in right now, or what has been more or less green lighted and what is still requiring more conversation. So I can bring up the file that I had emailed that laid out new recommendation information. But before I do that, let me just ask if there are any thoughts out there among the task force members that you would like to discuss. Okay. Marty. No, nothing from Marty? I just saw you come off of mute.
Are you referring to the new recommendations, Elizabeth, or what we've, okay. This is a question to Eagle. Luke, I think last meeting we talked about the risk of low head dams because of the circulating currents that can trap and cause drowning hazards. As far as any standardized signage, is there anything that is required at this point for signage at even low to high hazard dams?
Not at the state level. The state level, we do not have signage requirements for dams. You know, the feds do, and they have, you know, so that's something, you know, you might consider is, you know, standardizing, you know, when buoys are, you know, safety buoys and boat barriers are required, when signage is required, similar to what FERC has done. There are currently no requirements at the state level for anything like that.
So I guess that's something I'd propose to the group to consider then. That seems like a need at the very least, is having information at dams that could prevent some of these catastrophes from happening.
I think it was kind of my thought that would kind of be wrapped up into that last one that we went, which is the safety at dams and the security at dams. But, you know, definitely, you know, that's some of the major considerations that those plans should, you know, when appropriate, have appropriate signage and fencing and everything else to prevent, you know, and awareness, you know, around dams, you know, so that, you know, those are identified and properly marked, and so that the public doesn't come into it without knowing that there's a drowning hazard there.
Yeah.
So I guess question along those same lines, Luke, you had messaged me in regards to some recommendations, and you referred to FEMA 64 guidance on emergency action planning. And we're recommending that guidance be basically adopted for the state of Michigan, similar to what I guess Marty was asking. Is there any FEMA guidance then that we're recommending we should be adopting and implementing in Michigan in regards to those safety and signage type of safety measures at the dams?
So there are, I mean, FERC has guidance on signage, like the requirements for hydroelectric projects, but, you know, as you can imagine, since they're hydroelectric projects, some of the required signages are, you know, related to the powerhouse and the things like that are only present at hydro dams or retired hydro dams. So it might not be a direct fit, but there are certainly, you know, general signage requirements that say, you know, like they go up and downstream the river and say danger, you know, a dam 15 feet or 500 feet ahead or something like that, you know, or boat barriers, you know, where, you know, spillway, you know, spill upstream and downstream of spillways so that people can't paddle right up to the spillway. Or, you know, there's certain probably general criteria we can pull from. So the FEMA document, FEMA kind of pulls all of the federal, state, consultant agencies that are in dam safety, and they do these best practices documents. The FEMA 64 is kind of the best practices document for emergency action planning with input from all the federal agencies and states and stuff. They don't have one of those for signage or, you know, or security, but there are some resources that we could probably pull from, but it wouldn't be as complete of a one-stop shopping resource as the FEMA 64 for emergency action plans are. Just take a little more legwork.
I would add too that if you recall a few months ago, the task force members were asked to complete a survey. It was something that helped set up how we were going to review all of the ASDSO recommendations and how we came upon the subgroup meetings. But you may recall that there were opportunities to ask questions at that point. So we are we're going back and looking at all of those comments from before we started these meetings to make sure we're not missing questions or recommendations that came up during the survey. In COVID time, it was like 8 months ago. Sorry, Luke, what?
I was just gonna say along those same lines, Dan and Mario and I are kind of working on finalizing a document of some legislative and rule changes that we've been kicking around for a while. And, you know, so that we want to put those in front of the task force to get their blessing if it's appropriate, obviously, as well. So that'll probably be done outside of the meetings, kind of through email of here's some ideas that Eagle had. And I think we got, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'd say 8 or so, you know, and some of them are just very minor, tweaking a couple words to eliminate some loopholes. And some of them are thinking about some, you know, additional requirements that might need, you know, some input. So I'll try to get those finalized internally, that we're all good with these recommendations, and out to the group, hopefully ahead of Thanksgiving, so that you guys can think about it and talk about it offline or bring it up at, not probably, I think the agenda is pretty much set for the 30th, but maybe the following task force meeting, whatever. It's not very many and they're not exhaustive, but just along those lines, we have some that we've kind of come up with internally.
Great. Okay. Sounds like we can move on if there aren't any new recommendations for today. So that really, it takes us on the agenda to just talk about next steps. And as I think I kind of alluded to at the beginning of our meeting, for the Monday full task force meeting, we will have some reporting out by subgroup. Pretty quick, trying to keep it high level, at least to start. And we are looking for volunteer spokespeople to just share what's happened in this group. And whoever volunteers or is voluntold to do this, then I can work with you to provide some guidance on what kinds of questions we'd be asking you to answer and report out. So it's 5 minutes or so on the agenda for next week. So would anybody like to do that for this subgroup?
I didn't see all the mute buttons come off at once. What? Maybe their mouses are broken.
I was just checking to see who has already volunteered to do the other ones. Make sure we didn't ask someone to do it twice. Yeah. So, you know, the kind of information would just be very like how many recommendations did you adopt? How many were requiring more work and finalization? What were some of the main topics that were discussed in the subgroup?
So even though I was first in with the not it sign, I will take it on if someone will help me prepare. Just in that, again, I know I missed one of the meetings and certainly don't feel like an expert on the, you know, specifics of what we have here. But if you're ready to scrape the bottom of the barrel on this, I will step into that to that title.
All in favor? Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Confident you'll do great.
Tanya, this is good because I was looking at who's already reporting out, and we didn't have any women yet. So, you know, representation.
Now I have to reframe that bottom of the barrel thing now.
Great. Yeah. So I'll be in touch today about that. Great. Thanks. Let's see. I think that was everything that was on my list to go through today. Any other insights from the staff who are on the call or from our task force members?
No, as we've said before, we very much appreciate all the effort and work that the task force is putting into these subgroups. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as thank you to all of the time that the staff has put into attending and preparing for the meetings. Okay, well then I guess if we're all done with business of the meeting, I just want to wish everybody a safe and happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week for the full task force meeting and over email with some of you in the meanwhile. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.